Hello, 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 folks. I hope everyone is having a great day today. Great weekend so far. And today will be another fun stream. We'll get started in about 2 minutes ish. Is everyone having a good weekend so far? I know I am. It's actually a very beautiful day where I live. So after the stream, I'm going to be going outside and doing something. Hey, Lookman. Welcome to the stream. I'm glad you're having a good weekend, Lookman. Hey, Parasocial. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and get into the swing of things. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to turn up my light just a little bit. All right, there we go. Yeah, so hi, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. Like I said, I'll admit I kind of forgot that this was Super Bowl Sunday. So yeah, I'm not expecting a terribly high viewership today. Thank you for everybody who tuned in today. I know there's a lot of folks, if you are in the U.S., um, who are probably heading off to tailgating parties and getting ready for the big football game today. So, but the cool kids, us cool kids, we're going to be hanging out here on stream today, and we're going to be messing with some artificial intelligence, and we're going to be seeing if that artificial intelligence can build us a an app using the React JS framework. So can AI, is AI smart enough to build us a an app in React? Lookman says, "This is my first live class, and I am so glad I'm here on time." I've been watching and following along with your tutorials on YouTube. Really, really informative. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And like Lookman said, all of my past streams are available on YouTube. And if that's something that you might want to watch, you can do exclamation point YouTube in chat to get a link to my YouTube channel, or you can go onto YouTube and just search for Mayan Wolf Streams. My YouTube channel is ad free, so if ads really bug you, you can watch all of my past stuff on YouTube ad free. Um, Hey, Adil. Hey, Chris. Hope your day is going well. Rascal says we'll just add some sports references to the app and call it all part of the plan. There you go. Yes, let's see if let's try to remember to do that. We'll add some sports references. Parasocial says I did an experiment like that. So working with AI, I did an experiment like that with GPT plus Copilot and Rust. Yeah, yeah. I want to get into. I actually want to get into using GitHub Copilot on some of my stuff. Typing everything out by hand is a great way to learn, absolutely. And while you're learning, I think it's better to write everything out, really understand what each thing is doing. But as I get into building more complex apps, I find myself repeating the same things over and over again. And it would be nice if the AI could just predict that based on my past things that I've built, and kind of help me out a little bit there. So yeah, Copilot is something I want to start using. Obviously not on stream though. On stream, even if I do have Copilot, I will turn it off so that we can all, code along together. No Caffeine says, "Hi Mayan, I'm trying to learn React, so this is so helpful." Oh, fantastic! Yeah, might be in and out because my kids. No worries, No Caffeine. So that's the great thing about Twitch, right? Is that all my streams are recorded. So if at any point you have to step away or anything like that, you can always just go to the videos tab on my channel, and then this stream, you can watch this stream while it's still going live. You can watch the recording. You can go and rewind and do whatever you got to do. Stop, pause, rewind. And that's why I like Twitch so much. Hey, Hassler, how's it going? Chris says, "Or friends can sub here and fund the Mayan kaiju fighting mech bot." Disclaimer: I currently have no plans to build any kind of mech bot that you know of, but I appreciate the sentiment. Hey, Latjor. Parasocial says the experiment part was that I never wrote Rust before. Yeah, that's one of the cool things I think about these AI tools, these AI assistive tools, is that it makes the barrier to entry for some of these things a little bit less scary, right? So stuff like React, I think, which we'll find, doing React stuff with React becomes a lot easier when you don't have to write it all yourself. When you can, explore the concepts and things like that. And then the same can be said for other frameworks and languages as well. Mittel says, "I'm making seedless hot sauce from scratch and Brussels sprouts with minced onions, garlic, and cilantro, and watching you on stream." Wow, you're gonna make me hungry, Mittel. Come on, don't do that to me when I'm when I'm just starting a stream. You're making me hungry. Sounds good though. I love hot sauce. Devdi says, "Hello, mine. Finally catch your streams live again." Hello to you too, Devdi. Adil says, "Is Google Bard out yet?" So, funny story. I don't know if y'all heard about that, but in the effort to catch up with ChatGPT, Google kind of just pushed whatever they had out the door. One of those things was Google Bard, and they recently put out an ad for Google Bard, in which they were trying to show off its capability by talking about the Webb Space Telescope. It's topical, it's new, it's something that's in the news, so to speak. And one of the facts that they showed in this marketing material, one of the facts that Bard gave back, like spat back out, was incorrect. It stated that the Webb telescope was the first telescope to ever take a picture of an exoplanet or a planet, outside of our solar system, and or outside of our, was it galaxy or solar system? I don't remember. But anyway, an exoplanet. Um, and yeah, that's very much incorrect. The Hubble Space Telescope has been doing that for years. And so that caused Google's stock price to go down, or like value to go down by like $100 billion or something ridiculous, in just a few hours. So yeah, it's not going well. I guess to answer your question, yeah, Google Bard is out, but it's not going well. Yeah. Everybody's cooking right now. What are y'all doing to me? Jeez. Yeah, Rascal 2 says that'll teach PMs and such that when the devs say it's not ready, to believe them. So, funnily enough, I told this story last time. ChatGPT, the version we are currently using, is actually not a finished version. So that was a calculated risk. Company leadership did not want to wait for ChatGPT 4. So what you see on the screen right now is ChatGPT 3.5. It is not a finished version. So this isn't even this isn't even its final form, so to speak. Uh, yeah, so interestingly, ChatGPT did it. It was a gamble and it worked. Google did it and it did not. Middle says it shouldn't be about being first, it should be about being right. Unfortunately, that does kind of conflict with the general philosophy in the tech world, which is, fail fast, right? You toss something out there, and then if it doesn't work, then you just try the next thing, right? Unfortunately, that gets a little less okay when you start getting into, these ethical questions of when a tool like this states something as fact, and it's complete, horse hockey. I, who takes the blame there? So yeah, when ethical questions become involved with tech, that's a very that's a minefield, right? Take a quick drink here. All right. So, oh yeah, and Planet Mimi clarified, yeah, Google Bard is not out to the public. It is just out to select users. That's correct. Yeah. Um, but they did put out that they still put out that advertisement that was factually incorrect. Ooh, yeah, Mattel Geek sharing a really nice article there. There's a really good article called "Write the Right Stuff" about how the space shuttle code was 99.9% bug free. It was really interesting. I would recommend reading it. Well, that's probably some of the cleanest code um, ever written, I would imagine. Yeah, with the complexity of the space shuttle, it just about had to be. Yeah, and ChatGPT, that's correct. ChatGPT's model is much larger than GPT-3. Yep. There's a great article in Ars Technica. I'll find it over the break when we have our break. I shared it last time in my previous stream that goes over an exhaustive history of the um, the origins of these chat models, like the one we're going to be using today, the history, how they build upon each other, what's different about each one, and how they work, which I think is also important to understand, like in a conceptual sense, what is happening here to make this wizardry. Um, and so I'll find that article over the break and I'll share it in chat when we come back, from the break, our next break at the top of the hour. Because I think that's important for everybody to know. People should be informed as to how this stuff works. Okay, so what are we doing today? Well, today, what we are going to be doing is seeing if ChatGPT can help us build a very simple React application. Um, so if you tuned in last week, what we did is we built a full stack vanilla JavaScript and EJS, Node Express, EJS, MongoDB. Um, application from scratch using only code that ChatGPT was able to generate for us. So we didn't use anything other than what ChatGPT gave us back. We tailored our prompts to sort of tweak the code until it all worked together very nicely. Um, and what was truly amazing is what it gave us was mostly right. However, that doesn't mean that something like ChatGPT is going to be able to take anybody's job anytime soon. We had to give it very specific prompts. We had to tell it to add certain things, remove certain things, in order to make the code actually work. But in the end, we were able to build a full stack app with MongoDB, Mongoose, Node, Express, um, and then on the front end we had CSS, HTML, and then EJS for our template. What we're going to do this week is we're going to build a much simpler app using React, because folks are. I think if you're in 100 devs, you're probably less familiar with React than you are with just vanilla writing something in HTML, CSS, EJS, that sort of thing. So we're not going to do full stack this time. We're just going to focus on building an app that is functional. So we're just going to do a simple to-do list sort of an app. See if it can build that for us and style it for us with React as the framework that we're going to use. Chat is buzzing here. Let me catch up with chat. Adil says, have you worked with Ruby? Would you recommend Ruby on Rails in 2023? I have not worked with Ruby. If anybody else has, you're welcome to weigh in. Devil's talking about they messed with GPT. Yeah. Using a lot of RAM to load. Wow. You take forever to answer stuff. Yep. That's why I like, in this case, it's ideal for a chat GPT in the cloud is a great thing. Cleopatra says, I'm actually building an Electron app with ChatGPT right now. That's awesome, Cleopatra. Yeah, that's the cool thing about ChatGPT is it's just another tool that we can use. Mittel says, work had to sign up for a ChatGPT account. They were talking about having us use it to get solutions quicker for performing tasks using PowerShell. usually related to Microsoft 365 type stuff. Yeah, that's how I hope that businesses use ChatGPT, as an actual like reference source and a tool to get things done faster. Devil says they've been playing around with Stable Diffusion. Yep, I have Stable Diffusion on my machine as well. We've used it to generate some pretty cool stuff in the past here on stream. Oh, Jellybean says Shopify is a big employer that uses Rails. Awesome. Thank you for the follow, Vituchu. Yeah, Rascalus is not the first company I heard paying for it for their teams. Yeah, and so there is a paid version now. Up here in the bottom left corner, you can upgrade to Plus. It is $20 a month. I have not done so yet, but I think I will. Given how much I've been using it lately, I think it will be worth it. You won't have downtimes or timeouts, or probably fewer, I suppose. And you get access to new features as they come out. With the level of utility that I've gotten from it so far, I do think I will be upgrading. Parasocial says, my colleagues don't want to use Copilot and CPT. I should probably make them. Honestly, a lot of my coworkers don't even want to use VS Code. So you're one step ahead of me, friend. Oh boy. Yeah, Mattel says, of course, there's a paid version. Got to make that paper. Honestly, I don't blame them. Each transaction that ChatGPT processes, this each time you ask it for something, like each token that it processes, costs the company, costs OpenAI like multiple cents. So that's like, think about the bajillions of things that it does every single day for millions of people around the world. That's a huge expense. Wow, Devil. I hope it finishes. Hope it finishes processing that for you. Wow. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We are in ChatGPT right now, and what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask ChatGPT to first just give us a to-do app. Let's see what it spits back. We're going to say, all right, give us a to-do app with React, and then we'll see what we get. And then we'll see if we can then run that app in VS Code and see if we can get it to load up in the browser. Now, how familiar here is everybody with React? Is there anybody in chat who does not know what React is? When I say React, you don't know, okay, what is it? Feel free to raise your hand and say, I don't know what React is. That's perfectly fine. Mattel says there's a Windows desktop client for ChatGPT. Yep. Thus far, I've had no problems with just the browser version, so I've been sticking with that. But GPT can style with Tailwind. Yeah, so we're going to do some styling on our app today. We're not going to use Tailwind, but we are going to do some styling on our app that's other than just plain CSS. Okay, Rex says, I don't know what React is. That's perfectly fine. So in simple terms, React is just a framework that we can use to help render our user interface for our app. And the cool thing about React is that it allows us to sort of create individual, what are called components. So like individual sections of a page, which contain parts of that user interface. And if you've ever built like an app that has updated information, so the user interface might be able to update, submit data, display data, that kind of thing. If you've ever built an app like that using just something traditional like EJS or something like that, you have to reload the page when an element changes, right? Something updates, you add an item to a list, then you have to reload the page to make that item show up. The cool thing about React is that it can individually render these components without reloading the page. So an item gets added to a list, only that list updates and it shows the new item. So what you'll find is that's how a lot of websites seamlessly update the user interface without constantly refreshing, reloading, all that sort of thing. So if you think about a complicated website, how many things are always changing in the interface, you would not want to reload the page like, I don't know, a dozen times a minute or something like that. That would be really disruptive. Instead, what you want is just individual parts of that interface updating as needed. So we'll get into a little bit more about what's happening under the hood, but that's a nice advantage of React. One of the many, there's several other advantages, but like I said, we'll look at that more once we have some code to work with. Okay, so I have a bit of a script here. I'm going to pull it up on my other screen, but just because I have a script doesn't mean that we'll end up following it. I'm just trying to give a little bit of a little bit of a flow to today's exercise, but we'll see if it works. All right, so first thing I'm just going to do here is actually I'm going to reload this first, just because sometimes it may have timed it. I don't know how long it takes to time out, but sometimes it just times out and stops working. So, all right, here we go. I'm just going to say generate a to-do list using React, and let's see what we get back. Hey, Scotty. Yeah, and Parasocial also says when a framework takes over an entire page, that can you can do different things with navigation and routing. Yeah, absolutely. React can also you can use something like the React Router DOM, which can change the way routing works, in your application. There's all sorts of things. React is very powerful, and it can do a lot of stuff. Hey, Asler asked about part two of SQL. Yes, I still want to do that. I still want to do the Supabase, build an app with Supabase on stream as well. I would love to partner with Leon again on that. So he and I still need to collaborate on that partnership. No Caffeine says many front end positions ask for React. Yes, that is correct. If you install the what is this called, the React Developer Tools, in Chrome or your browser of choice, you can install this and you can visit a website and you can see this will change color depending on whether a site was built with React or not. And what you'll find is that many sites will indicate, this little plugin here will indicate, yes, this site was built with React. It's extremely common. Oh boy, it's chugging a little bit today. We're chugging along. Come on, baby. Still good. It's still working though. We're getting there. Yeah, I was actually using this earlier and it was not going this slow. But of course, when we go live, it decides to, slow down. Star Fox says, interesting that it's hard coding to do's. Yeah. So this is what happened when I did this previously. I think it's just giving some examples, so you have something to start with. If you could ask it to remove these, you could say, please remove the hard coded values, and it would. But we'll leave them. It's not hurting anything. Svuda says, hey, I have a question. Is it okay to recreate other websites' design and functionality for my portfolio project? Um, you can, I would say don't copy them exactly, right? Don't pass their sites off like as yours, right? Don't say like, don't make it seem like, oh yeah, I built that site. Here it is on my portfolio. I built it. If you can give it a similar design, you can say, oh, I really like that design element from that site. I want to recreate it in my site. You can make it look similar, but don't make it as, I would say, don't try to pass it off as your own. All right, so let's see what we have here. What did it give us? Um, all right, so we have a to-do list function here, and it's setting our state, and we'll talk about state here in a little bit. We have a function here where it is checking to see if a to-do item has been completed. And then down here, we have the actual sort of appearance of what's going to be returned. Um, so it's going to map through each to-do item, and then on click, it will check them off or not. Okay, so let's see if we can run that. And we're not, there's probably what it gives us back is not going to be ideal or perfect, but we're going to try not to not modify it. We're just going to see if it can, if we can run what it gives us without modification. All right, so how do I run this? Well, let's go ahead and see if ChatGPT can tell us then how do we run this code. So I'm going to say, how do I run this code? We'll see if what ChatGPT, we'll follow ChatGPT's instructions and see if that can get it working. Oh, now it's faster. Hey, take your B. Welcome. Okay, so it's telling us how to set up a development environment for React. So first off, yeah, you should have Node and NPM installed. I'm assuming that pretty much everybody here does. If you don't, you can go ahead and install it, or you can just observe. So you want to create your new directory. So Node and NPM installed, create your new directory, and then we will run the following command to create a new React project. Now, can you guys see that? I don't know how large it is on y'all's screens. I can zoom in a little bit if I need to. Hopefully that's more visible. So what I'm going to do is open up in VS Code. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal here. Oops. I'm going to do git bash. Not Pikaru asks a very interesting question. Why did they make the bot type stuff? I wonder, is it actually streaming data from the back end, or is it just an animation? So, Pikaru, I will say one thing that I have noticed is that sometimes it will correct itself. So it will type something and then it'll go back and change its phrasing. So it seems like it's putting it together as it goes. Given the fact that it'll sometimes type a phrase and then erase it and replace it with something else. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's an excellent question. Okay, so first things first, the thing it didn't tell us that we need to do is we need to do npm init -y in order to initialize npm in our project. So you can see I'm in a folder here for the app that I've created, and I'm going to do my npm init. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I could ask it to type instantly. Let's get this React app running first. All right, so we need to do npx create React app, and it's going to call it my to do app, which is fine. That's a fine name. So I'm just going to copy this code and drop it in. My to do app. Okay, now let's see what it does. All right, and so it's telling us. Oh, that's behind my head. I do apologize. It's telling us that it is creating a React app, and it's going to take a hot minute to do it. That's fine. Yes, and Parasocial says create React app. We'll create a Git repo and npm package for you. Yes, that is true. It will go ahead and set up, your GitHub repo for the project. So it makes it a little awkward when you have like when you're building an API and a React app in the same folder, and then you end up with a repo for just the React part. But it's all good. It's very helpful. All right, so it is done. And what's wonderful about React is that it also tells you how to get started. So it says we suggest that you begin by typing cd my to do app and npm start. So cd obviously being change directory, right? We want to change into that folder, and then we can use npm start to start the app. Now, ChatGPT has told us the same thing, so we'll go ahead and do that. Oops, maybe. I tried to copy it. Okay, now we can see that we are now in that directory. So it's important that before you try to start it, you have to cd into the new folder that was created. And Then the next thing we need to do is, well, first off, let's just make sure that React is working. So we're just going to do an npm start first. All right. And then it should, oh, and I have something already running on port 3000, so I'm going to run it on a different port. It's going to choose a different port for me and then fire it up. All right. So this tells us, if you get this displaying in your browser, this tells us that React is working successfully, and now we can actually start building the app or using the code that ChatGPT is giving us, right? So you should see this. If React is working, you should see this window open automatically in your browser. So I'm going to go back to this tab. Thank you for the follow, us scripter. All right. So let's go ahead and grab the code that ChatGPT gave us, and we're going to put it into source/app.js. That's where it's telling us to put it. So I'm going to open that directory, open source, and then we have an app.js file here, which already has some stuff in it automatically. Yep. So we already have an app.js file here, which has some stuff in it. We're going to replace that with the code that ChatGPT has provided. So let's see if it works. And y'all are welcome to follow along and open your own instance of ChatGPT and try this out yourself. This is absolutely something that you can and should try. All right, we're just going to replace the entire thing because that's what it told us to do. And we'll save it. And when we save, if you see the green text down here where it says, Webpack compiled successfully, that means that what you have is valid and React was able to compile it. So now let's switch back over to our tab here and see what we got. Okay, so we have a we have a few items shown here. Now let's see what happens if I click on them. Oh, look at that. Hey. Okay, I click it, I get a check mark, I click off of it, and the check mark goes away. So that's a good start, right? Good start. But I think we're also going to want a way to really make a functional to-do list, right? We're going to need a way for users to actually, for you to actually add stuff to the list. Like that's kind of important. But before we do that, let's note a few things about how this works. So as I mentioned earlier, right, React works by allowing you to make changes to the user interface without having to reload the page. So you can see that while I'm clicking on these things, the user interface is changing. It's adding and removing these check marks without reloading every single time. And what we would normally see if we were building, a more vanilla sort of application is that every time we would want to make a change here, we would have to refresh the page. And for smaller apps, that's fine, right? We don't care. For smaller apps, it's like, yeah, whatever. The page refreshes, it takes half a second, nobody even sees it, and it still works. So why would we care about using something like React? Well, what's important here is that as your app becomes more and more and more and more complex, for example, let's say you have a site with a bunch of images or something like that, or a ton of textual information and a ton of links and that kind of thing, or scripts that are running, then every time you refresh, that's very resource intensive. And so you only want to change what absolutely has to be changed. And so that's an advantage of React. Thank you for the followers, 8-Bit Boy and Brew Kane. Yeah, and folks are sharing a bunch of extensions and possible different things you can do to improve your React experience, which is great. For now, we're just going to focus on vanilla React for those who are new to it, but you can feel free to, the sky's the limit. You can explore all sorts of things to make your life easier as you get used to it. All right, so let's modify this to have some kind of a way for users or you to add new items to this list. And what's funny is the previous version of this that I had ChatGPT give to me, it just intuited that. It said, oh, yeah, I'll add something where you can input new stuff. But this time, ChatGPT said it wasn't going to do that. And that's fine. Those are the types of things that show you can't rely on artificial intelligence to behave the same way twice. It's always going to draw on its past experience a little bit differently every single time. And this is one of those times. Mm. Okay, so let's say add an input I'm gonna be very general here, and I'm gonna say add a way for a user to add a new item to the list. Or hang on, make it possible to add a new item to the list. I'm going to be even more general and generic here. I'm going to see what it spits back. Oh, we got to stretch? Okay. While it's rendering the code, I'm going to stretch. Ugh. All right, let's see what it gives us. So it's still giving us, we've got our state settings up here with a few default values. We've got our toggles, excuse me. Oh, and here we go. This is going to be, this code here is going to be crucial for our ability to add new items. So now what we get back should hopefully be, yes. So now we have the list, and then we also have a form, which is going to allow us to type and add a new item. Yeah. However, when we add, when we start to add this new item, we also need a new state variable. And we'll talk about state in a little bit. So yeah, they give us a little context here. We added a new state variable called new to do to store the text for the new to do that the user wants to add. We also added a form with an input field and a submit button, which allows the user to enter the text for a new item and add it to the list. And then the add to do function updates the current to do state with the new item and sets the new to do state back to an empty string. So when the form first appears, it should be empty, and so that state is empty. And then as we type, the state gets updated, and then once we submit, that add to do function updates the state of the to do items, which can then update the list. And that might be like, whoa, hang on a hot minute, what is this? What are we talking about here? But we'll talk about how React works with state and props and that sort of thing a little bit later. For now, let's just see if we can get this working. All right, so now I'm just going to grab this whole code again. Okay, compiled. Ah, there we go. Now we have a way to add stuff. So let's see if it works. What should I put here? Sports. Yeah, we promised we would say something about sports since you're hanging out with me instead of getting ready for the Super Bowl. So sports. We'll add that. There we go. And once again, the list has updated without reloading the page, right? It just updated this list. Page did not reload, and it all works the same way. John Coco says, wait, is the Super Bowl today? Yes, it is, my friend. The Super Bowl is today. Oh, Jellybean says, would it be possible to scroll the screen up a little bit? Yeah, sorry if you couldn't see that. Which screen? The left one or the right one? Oh, and I'll minimize this too. Go sports, indeed. Oh, that was before. Okay. I'll try to pay attention to that. Sorry, I sometimes forget that it's behind my head. But yeah, all we're really doing is we're taking the code that's generated on the left and we're copying it in to the right side, saving it, and then running it. Okay, so I think that's good. It's okay, right? It functionally works. But I want to add a little bit of style to this. I want to add a little bit of style to this and personal preference. But I'm actually quite fond. So there's a lot of different ways you could style it. So last week, what we did to style our app is we asked ChatGPT to just generate some CSS for us, and we dumped that CSS into a style sheet, and that was all well and good. However, there's also a lot of other tools out there that we can use to make our styling a lot easier. Um, there's a ton. There's Tailwind. There's tons of libraries. I personally am quite fond of Bootstrap. Now that might get me tied to the stake in some places. Um, but I am very fond of Bootstrap. I like the way it looks. It's functional. You can look at a page and immediately see what every element is for, what it does. It's very clean. It's accessible. I like Bootstrap. So today we're going to use Bootstrap to style this up. Also, I want to add a title to it too. And real quick, I'm going to also drop in chat the prompts we've done so far. So prompts we've used so far. This was number one. One. Two was, so if you're catching up now, this is what we've done so far. 2. 3 is this one here. And 4 is what we're just about to type. So this one here, I'm just going to say can you style the code with Bootstrap? All right, let's see what it comes up with. All right, there's the prompts. Starfucks has an excellent question. They say, I wonder if it will install Bootstrap as a dependency or bring in the CDN and tell you how to put it into the HTML. So based on what it's generated so far, which one did it choose, Starfox? What did it do? And Parasocial says, what are your thoughts on you should use TypeScript instead of JavaScript if code was generated by an AI? Was there a reason given for that? Parasocial? What was that? Whoever said this, did they give a reason? Because I mean, I think as long as your code works, I mean, who cares whether you wrote it or whether it was generated? Yeah, so a couple things that are happening here, great things that both Latjor and Dr. Moto have pointed out. So yes, it did not. So what it did is it's relying that we have some kind of a bootstrap.min.css file. However, we do not. So we're going to need to modify this. We're going to need to modify this a little bit in order to make it work. Because if I just plunk this code in here right now, it's going to be looking for this import file, which we don't have. And so it's okay. It's an easy fix. It says we also use Bootstrap classes to add some basic styling to the components. And the to-do list items are displayed in an unordered list, and the form for adding new to-dos is styled as an inline form. The completed to-dos are highlighted with a green background. Ooh, it's getting fancy. All right, let's see what it did. Yeah, Latjor says, yep, it failed with just the import. Exactly. So what we can do is we can fix this, though. We can fix this by telling so I guess real quick, what it did here is it's expecting us to already have some stuff saved locally here on our machine, and I don't have that, and you don't need that. What you'll want instead is the CDN. So what you'll want instead is this link right here. However, we're going to make Bootstrap get the link for us. So if you want to use Bootstrap in your project, you don't have to install anything. You can go to getbootstrap.com and include a link to it in your file or whatever, and just include it via the CDN. However, we can make ChatGPT do that for us. So I'm going to say, please use the Bootstrap CDN instead. And I'm going to ask it to add a relevant H1. Let's see. And I'm just going to add a title to the page. There. So we can have ChatGPT fix that and change the source. Wiz3 says, not polite enough, say pretty please. I do find myself saying please to ChatGPT quite a lot. It's so conversational. All right, so you notice that import statement is gone. It'll appear later. The Bootstrap stuff will appear later on. Renette says, maybe ask ChatGPT how to install Bootstrap. You certainly could, and it would tell you. I just generally use just the link because I don't want to install that stuff. Personal preference though. So all right, there we go. So what it did now is it's pasting in those link tags. We've got our style sheet there and all the stuff that we need. Now, one thing that you might notice is if you look at the version of Bootstrap, it's using version 4.5.2. If we go over to the Bootstrap site, the most current version of Bootstrap is 5.3.0. This isn't going to hurt anything. It's okay. The reason that it is using 4.5.2 is because this data the data in ChatGPT is only current as of 2021 and the end of 2021. So it's over a year old. That's why it's using an older version. But it's okay. It doesn't hurt anything for the stuff we're doing. It does not matter. Okay. Let's try it again and see what it looks like now with the proper link. So I'm going through and I'm just replacing all of the code once again in app.js. We're going to be doing this a lot. We'll save it. Compiled successfully. Now let's see how it looks. Ooh, oh, it's so fancy. Oh, look at that. We got these little badges. We got the green backgrounds. It feels so fancy. I like it. Very cool. We'll make sure that the ad still works. We'll say football or football. There we go. Football. Yeah. Oh. John Madden. Oh no, I know. I got that reference. So reactive, much wow. Yeah, absolutely, right? So it understands, ChatGPT understands what good styling or decent styling might look like, right? It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it looks okay. And it's got some helpful visual aids here to really tell us when something is completed. And Parasocial says, as far as for Bootstrap React, it's a question of, do you want to use Bootstrap components that require JS like modals? Yeah, so we won't be using modals today. But yeah, there's Bootstrap has a lot of great features, such as modals, which are those things that pop up. When you click a button and a little pop up appears with like a form or a yes no. It's got the rounded corners and buttons and things. So yeah, Bootstrap has those features as well. We won't be using those today, but yeah, that's something you can make use of in Bootstrap. All right, so that looks pretty good, I should say. And we've already, so the next thing on my script was to add a feature to undo completion on an item. But ChatGPT decided to just go ahead and give us that already. So yeah, this looks pretty good. I feel pretty good about it so far. Um, I think another thing I would like to do is have something that is keeping track of the number of items that are completed versus not completed. I think that would be good to have. And just kind of another thing to keep in mind is that all of our code right now is in a single file, and it's starting to look kind of gnarly, right? We got a lot going on here. It's all kind of lumped together. Um, it's all just kind of, I don't know, spilled out there in one place. And so, one thing we're going to think about once we're done adding features is maybe refactoring this a little bit so that it's making use of some of the advantages that React has. And one case is where we can break an app out into its individual components of the user interface and have those individual components be stored in separate locations, accessing them when we need them. So we can still display all the components on the page together, but they don't all have to exist together in one place in a single file. So that's kind of similar to what we've done before with using MVC structure for the backend, right? On our server, we could have just a single sort of a server.js or app.js, whatever, on the back end, which then imports stuff from other files in order to make the server actually work. So that's one thing that React can do for us as well, is sort of break this stuff out into individual components, keep those components in sync with each other, but they don't have to be in the same place. Latjor says, that is interesting. In my case, it tried to include code for the CDN in an index.html file. Oh, that is interesting. See, you never know how it's going to react and react. But that's the reason why, again, why it's not going to take your job, right? Because you have to kind of know what you're driving toward in order to make ChatGPT give you what you actually want versus just what it decides to spit out. Yeah, you gotta kind of, it's like it's like a herd of cats, and you got to be able to herd those cats in the right direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and have it give us something to keep track of the number of completed items versus the number of uncompleted items. So I'm just going to tell it that. I'm going to say, can you give me a component to keep track of the number of items that are completed and the number that are left to do. Say something like that. All right, so I'm going to paste that prompt in to chat here as well, so you can follow along if you like, and we'll see what that gives us back. Okay, so it's giving us a new function called to do counter. Yeah. And so notice that all it gave us this time was just a little snippet of code, right? That's not the whole thing that we've been getting back so far. That's just a little snippet. Hey, Dakota, how's it going? We are having fun with ChatGPT once again, building out an app using React this time. And now, so it gave us this little snippet. I'm going to scroll back up here. It gave us this little snippet, and this is what's called a component. So once again, this is just a little chunk of the user interface that is sort of complete within itself, right? It's a complete part of the user interface. In this case, it's the counter that keeps track of how many things are done versus how many things are left to do. And then that component can be integrated back into the main React application. And we'll see, given the code that it's given us down here, it should tell us how to do that. But before we explore the whole thing here, let's see what it's doing here. So function to do counter is taking in a value of to dos. Okay, and what it's taking in here, this is called a prop. And this is an important keyword to know when you're working with React. This is called a prop. And this is something that is passed down from the parent, right? So the parent is keeping track of the state everything is in. This prop is being passed down from the parent to tell this sort of child element or this component exactly what it should be doing at a given point. And so in this case, it takes in these to do items and it filters down. It counts, well, essentially it counts the number that are completed, so the ones that have a completed value of true, and then it just says, all right, subtract that from the total number of to-dos, and those are the ones that are still remaining to do. And then what it does is it returns a div with some text in it that just says completed X, remaining Y. And we're going to explore props and the parent child relationship, props and state in just a little bit once we get all these components set up. All right, so let's see how it's telling us to put this back into our app. Hey, Logic J, welcome. Good to see you. Just had a whole bunch of people come in. That's rad. Good to see everybody. Hey, Thirsty Pooch. Oh, you were here already, but hello again. All right. So, what is it telling us to do? How do we figure out where it's incorporating this? Well, it's incorporating it right here underneath the title, but above the list. It's pulling in that to do counter component into the rest of our app. And so when I pull it over here into the app in VS Code, we'll see how that fits in. Up top, we can see that it's importing the to-do counter from an external location. So that's kind of doing what we said we kind of wanted to do, right? It's putting all of that, it's putting that component in a separate location, and then all we need to do is import it into our main app, and it'll display just like it's part of the file. Hey, Randy Chrome from Jamaica. Oh, that's awesome. Good to see you, Randy. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is copy this code for the body. Let's see. Oh, I don't think it's done. Did it finish? Sometimes it just craps out. Sometimes it stops generating code halfway through, and you just have to say continue, and it'll finish. So thank you for the follows, folks. Getting a lot of good follows here. Code Peak and Morbid Curiosity, thank you. All right, there we go. It got a little confused, but it's got the spirit. All right. Poor thing. All right, I'm going to replace the code in app.js. And then let's see, we're going to have to kind of stitch this together. Let's see, where did it stop? The original turnip, thank you for the follow. Yeah, exactly. Like I say, it got a little confused, so we might not get this right, but all right. So it got as far as to do completed. Close the span. And I might have to have it give me the I'm gonna have it give me the to-do list component again. To-do list component again. Yeah, I think that's what this one is called. Just to be sure we get it right. Yeah. Ledger says, what is the prompt you used? Yeah, so I'll drop all the kind of the progression of prompts so far into the chat again. Now, your mileage may vary. This may not be the same progression that you follow. This is kind of, I'll paste in my script that I've been following. We've done a couple extra prompts, but this should go. Oh, sorry. It doesn't like to put enter. It doesn't like to put enters between the prompts. Let me try again. I'm gonna have to add numbers to these. Oh, Twitch chat. It is not built for formatting things. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, let's try that. That should make it a little better. Okay. Come on, buddy. You're almost done. You can do it. Little guy. Champa says, will you be pushing this to GitHub? No formatting for you. There we go. Okay. No, it kept the formatting. It kept it. There's not a lot of formatting to be had. All right. So now let's drop this into app.js. And we'll save it. Aha. Now we get an error. It says failed to compile. So this is what a React error looks like. It says failed to compile, module not found, error, can't resolve, to do counter. And remember, that was the new component we just had it generate. So we need to make sure that we add that component and import it so that our code can reference it. So it's referencing that new counter that we added right here, to do counter, and passing in the to-dos. And so what we need to do is make sure that we import it from somewhere in our file structure. Right now, we don't have it anywhere. This import statement can't import it because we didn't put the component anywhere. Hey, Interplanet. We could tell it. You could try asking it what happens if you get an error. You could try asking ChatGPT to help you troubleshoot. In our case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure that we grab the component that it built for us and add that to our file structure. So where are we going to put it? We're going to create a new folder inside of our source folder. So our source folder is where we've been working this whole time. We've been in app.js, and that's where we've been pasting all of our code up until now. But we want to add a little bit more structure to our application. So what we're going to do instead is go into our source folder and add a subfolder called components. And this is where we're going to offload some of the stuff that's currently in app.js. We're going to start with this counter. We're going to test it. We're going to make sure it works. And then we're going to use ChatGPT to carve out some of the other stuff in our app, break it apart, and put it into individual components inside of that components folder, then reference those components inside of our app.js. ChatGPT is great for explaining errors. It absolutely is. Yes. 100%. It's very polite. It's much more polite than Stack Overflow for the most part. All right, so inside of my new components folder, which is inside of my source folder, I'm going to add a file called to-do counter. Now, instead of just using the usual JS extension, I'm going to use the React extension for JS called JSX. Okay, so to-do counter.jsx, and I'm going to drop the code into that file and save it. Okay. So now my individual component is inside of my components folder. And I'm going to go back to app.js and I'm going to import this properly. So I'm going to say import to do counter, and now it found it, right? Import to do counter from components / to do counter. Hooray. So now let's save it and see if it compiles, and then we'll see if it's actually pulling in that counter as expected. Hooray, it compiled. So does that make sense what we did there? It's very similar to what you do when you're simplifying your backend, when you're simplifying your server. You're taking these individual elements, which are complete within themselves and how they function, right? They perform a specific function, and you're taking them and you're moving them into another location so they're not cluttering up the important stuff, right? They're not cluttering up the structure. You put everything in its place. You're encapsulating them in everything in its appropriate place, and so that's what we're going to do with more stuff in our application once we test this. All right, so it compiled. Now let's see how it looks. Hey, check it out! Look what we have now. So now we have the header, then we have our counter, and then we have our list. Now, when I click something here on the list, watch the counter. Boop, 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 boop. So the counter is updating, right? The counter is updating even though that code is in a completely different location physically in our project, right? It's in another file, it's in another folder, it's in another file. Even though we've done that, it still all works together seamlessly. And that is that's one of the real advantages of React, right? Is it can keep all of these individual components in sync with each other using what we call state, and then passing that state downward from the parent, from our app.js, to any child components all at once. So everything stays in sync with each other. So that's what we're going to leverage when we refactor this to separate all of these other things. So for example, our input form is kind of its own little thing, right? It performs a specific action within itself. Our form and the submit button, like that is a closed unit that does a thing, that performs an action. So that could be a component within itself. The same thing with the actual list part of our to-do list. That could be its own component because it is a list. It takes things, it displays them, it marks them as complete and not complete, and that is its function. It is complete within itself. So I see that we have 3 individual components here. We have the counter, we have the list, and we have the input form. So each of those should be pulled out individually, dropped into their own folders, their own files, and then only referenced from the parent. And again, the magic of React is that doesn't matter. Our app.js can keep them all in sync using state and then passing that state down to the children as props. We'll talk more about that once we finish refactoring this and getting everything separated out into its individual components. It'll make more sense once it's a little cleaner. So we'll do that first, and then we'll talk more about the mechanics of how this works. Witchcraft. What saucer is this? Logic J says, nice. Are you using Bootstrap CDN? Yes, we are. We actually told ChatGPT specifically to use Bootstrap. So if we look, where is it? So we can see we've got our style sheet here. We're using the CDN. It is using a slightly older version of the Bootstrap CDN, which absolutely does not matter in our case. But the reason why it's doing this is because this data in ChatGPT is from 2021, so it doesn't know that there's a newer one. And thank you for the follows, folks, by the way. Original Turnip, Marco Jozic. Thank you so much. Oh, Ventura Codes, thank you as well. All I hear in my head is, she turned me into a newt. So that's what we're going to do. Oh, Randy Chrome, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Logic. I appreciate it. I like explaining things. Explaining things helps me learn too. Jellybean says, will you be posting this to GitHub? Yes, I will. I'd like to get it refactored first, and then I will post the finished version to GitHub along with the script. So kind of like we did last time. I'll post, what we end up with, and then, the script that we use to get there. So, and the script will be in the README. Yeah, I definitely will. Okay, so we're going to take a break because it is break time. We'll take 5 minutes, and then when we come back, what we'll do is we're going to think more. We'll learn how to think in terms of components versus in terms of just stuff on a page. So thinking in terms of components, we will get ChatGPT to break these things out into individual components, and then we'll see how much cleaner the code becomes. And after we do that, we get it working. Then we'll do a walkthrough on the code and we'll talk more about what's happening to make this work, right? And the advantages that React gives us. Thank you, Jellybean. But yeah, explain, Jen. If you ever have trouble understanding a concept, I would highly suggest start streaming and try explaining it to others, and that really deepens your understanding of all this stuff. It certainly helps me out. Mr. Giro, thank you for the follow. Um, Original Turnip says, "Hi, hello. If the app contained multiple pages, would you create separate would you create a separate pages directory, or is there a simpler way? Each page would reference the components, and app.js would reference the pages. So it depends on kind of how you want the finished project to look. I mean, I think that there are times when you legitimately want separate pages in your app, right? You want the user to have a different visual experience on multiple pages. So you might want there to be a landing page, and then you want there to be an account page, which is completely separate, different visual look and feel. And so you want that to be a truly separate page. So you would need to create a separate page. However, what you could do is reference some of the same components, right? So let's say you had a header component. Inside of that header component, you could have some stuff happening, like a nav bar or a ticker or something like that. And you could reference the same component on multiple pages. So that's another advantage, is that these components are reusable. You make them once, you reference them as many times as you want on different pages or the same page or whatever. So it just depends on the flow of your app, right? Whether you want additional pages or a single page with multiple components or whatever. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but um, you just think about the navigation and the overall interface of your app. All right, so 5 minute break. Um, Also, I'm going to try to find that 5 minute a minute timer. There we go. All right. Reset, and we'll start the timer, and I will see you all back here in 5 minutes. Hi, Fafin. Good to see you. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left in the break. Counting down. So if you haven't gotten up yet, please do. If you are physically able to do so, please get up and stretch. I know during the breaks I sit down because I stand while I'm streaming, and so just important to change your body position. Um, get up if you can, stretch, get some water, use the restroom, and then come on back. Oh, thank you, Faffin. I'm glad my notification makes you smile. I try to make them fairly catchy. Mattel says, I haven't sat down since you started. Yeah, there were like 3 people making dinner while they're watching me, which is impressive. Um, and Cobb says, our Angular devs welcome here. Anyone is welcome here. Good to have you there, Cobbs. Good to see you. We actually had somebody who's a fairly regular viewer, I think called Angular developer or whatever. So yeah, you're all good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the timer here. And so original turnip, I don't know if you're still on. I hope you are. But I was thinking about your question. Oh yeah, no worries. So I wanted to show you, um, this is not the app we're currently working on. This is another project I was doing yesterday. I was learning a little bit about GraphQL. And so, but that doesn't really matter. What I want to show you is just kind of the overall structure. So turnip in response to your question. So I have a ton of components. And then I have pages. So pages are in a page directory, and then I still have my singular app.js. So I think that's a reasonable way to organize your app. So pages, and then a single app.js, which then references those pages. Right? We've got importing the pages here in the app.js. So yeah, so app.js is still kind of the hub for the project, but the pages are inside of a page's location, a specific page location. Yeah. Hey, GQL. Yeah. Yeah, no worries, original. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that the way I did it is right. I'm just saying that I think that sounds reasonable. Logic J says, is GraphQL confusing? I'm still pretty new with it. Somebody told me that it's like a cross between like it brings in some of the elements that I'm familiar with from working with SQL into your document style database. So like MongoDB and that kind of thing. So it's like a hybrid between the strictness of SQL and the document style of NoSQL databases. And that's kind of true. I'm still pretty new. I don't really have an opinion on it yet. It's interesting and kind of fun in ways. So yeah, it's fun to just try stuff, right? Why not? Michaela, thank you for the follow. Yeah, I don't really have a handle on it yet. I know enough to be dangerous now. But yeah, it's okay. Okay, so let's keep going. So before the break, we said that what we were able to do was take this individual component here for the counter, we put it in its own location, we put it in this components folder in its own file, but it was still able to be referenced within app.js and display in order on the page. So that's what we want to do for the rest of the components that we already have, or the rest of the elements that we already have on the page. And so one thing you can do if you're trying to break something up, break up a user interface into React components, is just try to find the things that look distinct on the page. And so we kind of talked about this before, but obviously the counter is its own thing. It performs its own actions, a very specific action. And then the list itself is it's kind of self-contained as well. It performs a specific action within the list. And then finally, I would say that the input form, the input with the submit button, is also its own self-contained unit. So I'm thinking we have 3 components here, one of which we've already migrated out, and then the other 2 we can as well. Yeah, so Drunk Uncle Grandma says, what resources are you using to learn GraphQL? So I've been kind of just Googling around and also like so Traversy Media is great. Basically using the ideas from their various videos that they put out there. They're great. They're great to follow along with. Um, and then Phil Snell says GraphQL is useful in that you can ask for just the data that you need. With REST APIs, you often get too much or not right. Yeah, exactly. So that's the main advantage of GraphQL, is that you can just ask for specifically what you need in that moment. Yeah. Little Trucker Man, welcome. They say, are you building a ChatGPT clone? No, we aren't. We are using ChatGPT to generate React code for us. So we are building an app exclusively using code generated by ChatGPT. So we're not typing anything. I don't want to. My fingers, my fingers are far too delicate for actually typing code. Why do that when I could just ask ChatGPT to give me the code? I kid, obviously, but it's fun to see what you get. All right, even little trucker man says even better. Okay, so we're a little far along. We've gotten this far, trucker man. And what we're going to do now is we're going to refactor. We're going to refactor the code we've already gotten. So ChatGPT has given us a ton of code already. I'm scrolling through it here, and we're going to say, all right, that's all well and good, but I want code that is broken out into its individual components. So in order to do that, I'm just going to say to ChatGPT, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. I'm going to say, all right, can you please put the input form and the list into components as well. Drunk Uncle Grandma says this is a Control C, Control V only stream. Yeah, for the most part. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm telling ChatGPT to think about it, to look at the code logically, find the components that are relevant to just the input form, or find the code that's just relevant to the input form and just relevant to the list, and break those out individually. So let's see if it can do it. All right. So I'm going to drop that prompt into chat as well. There you go. Let's see if it can manage. Now, what it might do, I think what it's going to do here is it's going to break them out into components, but it's going to leave them on the same page as the rest of the code. So we're going to have to maybe kind of carve them out ourselves. That's okay. We can do that. It's not hard. As long as it breaks them out into individual functions, we can, yeah, so that's what it's doing. It's breaking them out into individual functions, which we will then move into their own files. And that's okay. It got it close enough. Diamika says POV me at work. Control C, Control V, baby. So for those of you who haven't worked as devs before, you might be surprised or not, I don't know, at how much of the work is sometimes just Control C, Control V. But the important part is knowing exactly what to Control C and Control V. Like that's the part where the knowledge comes in. It's like, okay, where do I find what I need, and what exactly do I need to copy? Winster brings up a great point. They say, I built my app using ChatGPT. It worked great in the beginning, but was a huge pain in the end because it made so many mistakes when code got complex. Absolutely. So there's only so much context that ChatGPT can keep track of, right? As you start getting more and more branches and pages and offshoots and components, it's inevitably going to start losing track of the conversation. I have to tell it to continue here. Continue. To do, toggle to do. Okay, it almost made it to the end. It's trying so hard. All right. Logic J says, and so once you get into more like complex code, you're going to want to use ChatGPT as more of a maybe a snippet generator, right? Like you don't remember how to import a specific library or something like that, and so you just ask ChatGPT for that one thing, or you give it a snippet and you ask it to refactor that snippet. So it's going to be less of a whole scale app generator and more of just a helper, right? Something to back you up occasionally. So let's go ahead and just drop in everything that it gave us here. We're going to drop that into our app.js. And then we're going to take the individual components and move them into their own files. All right, and I got to grab the second half of this here. Looks like it dropped an O. That's okay. There we go. Okay, I'll save this. It should compile. Oh, and the one thing I need to be careful of here is it messed up my import statement. So that's not the correct location for my to-do counter. So I'll just do the import again. Import, import, I cannot spell. Holy cow. All right, import to-do counter. We'll just re-import that. That'll be fine. Little Truckman says, once you've mastered those, you can begin to grasp Control X. Yeah, yeah. Control X is the next step. Exactly. Cut and paste. Dakota says, I read somewhere that ChatGPT can only keep up with about 8,000 characters contextually. Yeah, I'm sure they would have to limit it, right? Because at some point, it's going to become too resource intensive for it to go back through the entire context of your conversation forever. It's too hard. Wireball says, how about delete something you added? We could do. You could do. If you find the code getting too long and it keeps stopping, you can always delete stuff. Personal preference, your choice. All right, let's save it and see what happens. Okay, good. So it was able to compile. Let's just take a quick gander down here and see what we have. So we have, it's importing our to-do counter already. What we want to do is find the components that we want to remove. So one of them is going to be this one. And yeah, that's the list. And then this is the input form here. We're going to want to take each of these and move them into their own files. And then this is the container here, right? So this is our main app. This is our parent. So now let's see if it's able to successfully reference those components. Yeah, it is. So what it's doing here is it's referencing the to-do counter component, the to-do list component, and then the to-do form component as well. So we can fix that formatting up a little bit there and make that look nicer. Do that. Yeah, it's close enough. And then that. There we go. That looks better. Okay. All right, now let's get these individual components into their own files. So inside of, we got a question there. Fuel Snabble says, so I can't paste our 1 million line project into ChatGPT and ask to improve it. Hey, I don't know. Maybe like the paid version, the $20 a month version. Maybe that one lets you do that kind of thing. Maybe. Our 10 million line COBOL app. Oh God. Wireball says no for the to-do app crud. Oh, I see what you mean. So you're asking about some kind of a delete component as well. We could add something like that. That would be added into our probably into our to-do list component. Probably have a little delete. So yeah, that's something we could do next after we get this refactored and we talk through it. We could also then add a delete function as well. I got you now, Wireballs. All right, so let's go ahead in our components folder where we added to-do counter. We're going to also add to-do list dot JSS. Okay, add that in there, and we're going to take from app.js. We're going to cut this, right? We're going to do our Control X. Take that, and we're going to drop it into here. Now, just in general, when I take a piece of code and I move it into another file, but I want that piece of code to be referenced by things outside of the file, what do I need to do? What's one important thing to remember? What's something that I always have to do whenever I take a piece of code and move it out into another location, but I still want it to be able to be referenced in the previous location. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to need to do import export, right? Art Vandalay. We got to import export that mother. Yep. So what we can do is just from our other component, we can grab the import statement and the export statement. Yep. We're going to import and export here. We'll just do that, and we'll do that. Drop those in and update the name. There we go. So now we're importing React so we can do all the React stuff. And then in the end, we're exporting to-do list so it can be referenced. Save that. Okay, so that's our to-do list component taken care of. Let me catch up here on chat. 8-Bit Boy says, I don't like to Control C and Control V until I understand the code. If I don't, I spend my time learning about it first. Is that a good mentality for development, or do most developers think like that? No, I think it's perfectly reasonable to dive in and try to learn about the code before you start using it. The important thing is to walk that line and don't let yourself get bogged down in the theory, right? The understanding the history of a function and exactly why it works the way it does can sometimes prevent you from just using it and seeing what it does. So learning about something is perfectly fine and a great thing to do. Learn about the kind of arguments it takes in, the mechanism that makes it work. That's totally cool, but don't let that stop you from actually building stuff. As long as you're doing both, as long as you're learning and building, then you are perfectly fine. And that's not a bad way to learn. Some folks I've known, they think that they have to 100% understand everything about a function or a method or whatever before they can even run it. And it's like, no, just run it, see what happens, and then figure out why it did that. All right, so that's one of our components. Now let's grab the next one. Well, first off, let's make our file. So in components, we'll grab to do form.jsx and drop that in there. And then we'll grab the function. Take it out. And we'll do our control X. And then we will drop it in. And we'll do our import export just like we did before. All right, I know I'm going a little bit fast here. I will pause in just a second and make sure that we understand what we've just done. Save that. And I'm also going to save my app.js. Okay, what do we got here? Okay, yep. So we've got an error because to-do list and to-do form are not defined. Now, what do I need to do? Why did this error out? What do I need to do now? The reason I'm kind of harping on this is because it's the thing that people miss most often when they're building compartmentalized sort of apps. Why did I get an error here? To-do list is not defined. To-do form is not defined. When I saved app.js, why did I get this error? What am I missing in app.js? I moved these things to another file. So what do I need to do? Yeah, right, exactly. I need to do my imports. So that's the last step. And this is not just a React thing. This is, whenever you're breaking an app up into individual components of any kind, and then referencing those, from other locations, you got to do your export import. Yep, exactly. So import to-do list, and let's see. Oh, I think I have two. I think I have a naming issue here. So we'll do the list first. That's one. Now I should only have one error left. Yep, one error left. And then I haven't copied and pasted too quickly there. Boop, 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 boop. Save. Okay, now I can also import to do form. There we go. Now if I save, that should compile, and it did. Okay, so Invincible Buster, Invincible Hustler. Thank you for the follow. I approve Seinfeld references. All right. Marco says, "I like the way you're teaching. Makes it fun to watch and engage." Thank you, Marco. It makes it fun for me too. I'm more of an architect myself. Oh yeah, I love all the Seinfeld references. Hey, Madeline, good to see you. Rex Recker says, "Does ChatGPT also tell you when to create separate folders for the project?" No, it does not. It might suggest that. It might say, you might want to do something, but I found it doesn't very often give you guidance about specific structure for your app. Now, if you asked it to explain something like what is MVC structure, then it can tell you what that is. But that's another thing that it doesn't really understand is the larger big picture of what you're trying to do and the context around your project. So again, that's where you still like you can use ChatGPT to help you, but you do need to understand the why behind these sorts of things. And it's sort of like what 8-bit boy was saying is copying and pasting okay, absolutely, but I appreciate that you should also understand the why behind it, at least in a general sense, before you try to use it. Yeah. Okay, so what did we do here? Well, we took those components that were cluttering up our app.js. We saw that they were self-contained, so we put them into functions, and then we put those functions into separate files, and now we're referencing them within app.js. So let's see how that looks. Okay. Yay. It still works. And since we had it regenerate the code, it changed the names on some things, and so we lost the existing values that were stored in state. But that's okay. It should still work as expected. We'll go ahead and test that. So sports. Yep. And ball, football, or football. There we go. So now those values will be stored in state. If I reload it, they'll still be there. Oop, maybe not. Hello. Interesting. Looks like my state might be broken. Well, we'll look at that in a minute. Today's game is more like handball. That's true. 8-bit boy says, "I only know C and all I can think about is header files, but it seems close to Python. That import function, not sure about it though. Sure about it though. Yeah, I mean, there's some similarities, I think, between like JavaScript and Python. I've seen some other people that have started in JavaScript and gone to Python or back or vice versa. I don't know too much Python myself. I think of it as the classic example of asking someone to make a PB&J sandwich. Yeah, exactly. You have to be very specific about what you want to happen. Uh, you have to know why you're doing it and be able to understand what it is doing. It's like a better Google and Stack Overflow in one. That's a great way to describe it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's explore what we did, and then maybe we'll figure out, why it's not holding on to our state. I think. Let's see. We'll try one more time, but I think it's probably typo somewhere. A typo by ChatGPT, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. All right. So, what's happening here? Well, first off, we can see where our individual components are being referenced in the code, right? And how we can reference those individual components is kind of what almost looks like an HTML tag, right? We got the alligators, we got the alligators referencing those components. And so that's how React basically says, all right, I'm going to put this component here in a particular location on the page. And we can see that things are being passed into, essentially things are being passed into the reference component. And what those are called are props. Okay? So those are called props. And props are what get passed down from the parent, the app.js, Those are what gets passed down from the parent to the components underneath of it. And so essentially, the parent is keeping track of the state of things. It's keeping track of the current state of everything within the app, and it passes that state down to the components as what we call props. The way I like to think about it, the way I like to think about how React works in general between like the app.js and the individual components underneath it is, and so this may not be relevant to everybody, but I grew up really rural. I grew up in a really rural environment. And so what we would do is once a month or so, we would go to these big outdoor auctions, and we would go there to buy things like hay for our animals. So we had a bunch of animals, and so you'd have to buy big wagonfuls of hay all at once. And so what you would do is everybody would go out with their pickup trucks, and they would park in a muddy field, and all the farmers and everybody, and these big trucks of hay would be parked out in the field, and then everybody goes out and they stand in the muddy field, you know, 50, 100 people. Um, and there's an auctioneer. There's one guy with a microphone who stands up on like a box or something and auctions off all of these trailers full of hay. So there's a big crowd of people. They're all standing around. There's really no organization. Um, and the auctioneer has to make sure that each wagon of hay sells for the highest price. So they have a microphone and they're yelling out over the crowd. If you've never seen an auctioneer, they're truly impressive. The way they speak and the way they control the crowd is pretty incredible. So the auctioneer states what's being sold and they state the price. And then as people think they want to pay that price, they can raise their hand. People in the crowd just raise their hand. They don't got to say anything. Raise their hand. The auctioneer spots it. And the auctioneer then says, oh, we've got a bid. We got a bid. And then they raise the price to see if anybody wants to bid more. And so the auctioneer is stating the price. Somebody makes a bid. The auctioneer notices the price, and then they they state a new price to everyone in the crowd. So everybody in the crowd now hears the new price, the higher price, to see if they want to pay that or if the person who bid is able to win. Now, the way this works is that, again, the other people in the crowd, all like the 100 people there, they probably didn't see that person raise their hand. There's no way they could, they're all out in a muddy field somewhere. The auctioneer is the one that's keeping track of whose hand has been raised. So they spot it, they keep track, and then they let everybody in the crowd know that someone has made a bid. Now everybody in the crowd knows the new price. The price has changed. We have a new state of things, right? And then eventually it sells. The auctioneer tells everybody that it sells. Everybody in the crowd knows a new item is brought up. So what I'm trying to imply here by this slightly tortured analogy is that the auctioneer is like our app.js. All of the people in the crowd are like the components. Those components, none of the individual components have to talk to each other. None of them have to know what's going on in the other components. App.js, the auctioneer, is keeping track of what's going on. So if something changes in a child, right? The user starts to input something or they click on something, the child raises their hand, and what we'll see is that our child components are doing that by calling functions. But anyway, they raise their hand, say, hey, something's changed. Auctioneer notices that, says, all right, something has changed. And then the auctioneer updates it, updates the state, the overall state of the entire app, and then passes that information back down to all of the children simultaneously. So that's why when we click something here, what's actually happening is inside of our list component, a function is called, which then goes back up to app.js, updates the state, and then that new state is passed down to all of the other components. In this case, it's really only relevant for our counter here. But the list is not talking to the counter. What's happening is this information is passed up in terms of a function being called, the state is updated, and then the information about that updated state is passed down to the children using props. Okay, so I hope that helps make sense a little bit as just sort of a high level analogy about how React functions. Um, oh, good. Resracker says, I don't know JavaScript, but I'll keep this in mind when I start learning JavaScript. Yes. And to be clear, this is not strictly this is not like a vanilla JavaScript thing necessarily. It is in as a general concept. You start getting to like, you know, classes and scope and that kind of thing. It's kind of similar to that. But you know, I would if you're just starting to learn JavaScript, I wouldn't jump right into React. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Get comfortable with vanilla JS first, and then start, you know, branching out. All right, let me catch up with chat. A lot of folks were talking here, so yeah, Marco has given some cautions there about ChatGPT. Yeah, going off of training data and not really understanding context, and that's absolutely appropriate. Yep. Yes, auctioneers do speak very quickly, Rex. Yeah, absolutely. I'm telling you, if you've never heard an auctioneer speak, look up some YouTube videos of auctioneers doing it, and they are incredible and entertaining. And that's how you can make 100 people stand in a muddy field to bid on hay for like 2 hours because they are very good at what they do. Foo Banana, thank you for the follow. Yeah, I guess it's similar. It's a little similar to a global variable, kind of updating its value. Yeah, must be some good hay. Yeah, just can't beat that alfalfa, man. Yep, it's the good stuff. All right. So let's walk through kind of how this app is working with state and props. Let me check one more thing here. Okay, good. Okay, so we're in app.js right now. And as we start to go into kind of our main function, right? Like this is the parent. This is the one. This is the function that encapsulates all of our other components. And so it is the parent. And so being the parent in React, the general principle is um, that you want to lift state up as high as you possibly can. So by lifting state up, what we mean is that state should exist at the parent level and then be passed down to all of the children underneath it so that the children don't have to think about that. They don't know state. They just know what they take in from their parent. um, so that's what's happening here. We have our parent, which is our container, and first thing we're doing here is we're using use state, and we're setting up these, you know, three initial values that load. We're setting up our initial state here. So const use state, and we're also setting up well, we're setting up a few different instances of state here. So the first one is for setting our to-dos. These are the to-dos that are going to show up in our list. And then the next one is for a new to-do, and we set that state as empty because that's what's going to show up in our input box over here, right? We want our input box to start out empty. And so we're setting the initial value of that to be empty. And now we are setting up a couple of other functions here. What this one's doing is it's just toggling the to-do value. So first thing that we're doing is we are creating a variable called updated to-dos, and we're taking what is existing in the to-dos state. So currently there's 3 values in there. We're taking that and what is this? Does anybody know what this is? When we do this bracket dot 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 to-dos, what are we doing there? What is it? Or two, so you can answer either one. One, what is that called? Or two, what is it doing? Yeah, exactly. It's called the spread operator. Yep. And what we're doing is we're taking this existing list of to-do objects and state, yeah, and we're breaking it into its individual components. Yep. And so now what we'll end up with is an array with each to-do item in it. And so next thing that's going to happen is we find the index of the completed item, because what's getting passed into this function is an index. So we find the index of the item that was clicked, pass it in here, and then update that value to completed. Latjor says, Mindwolf, when you post this to GitHub, can you please include the list of prompts used from ChatGPT in the README? Yes, I will. I'll include the list of prompts in the README like we did last time. That seemed to work pretty well. And then in the end, so for we're just really, all we're doing here is we're updating, this completed value from true to false or false to true, whichever way it needs to go. And then the last thing that we do is we essentially we're updating the state from with the updated value. So whatever value we changed, we're now incorporating that into the overall state. Now for the add to do, it's going to work a little bit differently. So you might not think about it, but as you type into a form, when you're working with React, every time you type, there is a state that is being updated. It is actively tracking every input that you make into this form. So as an event takes place, it's going to essentially take the list of existing to-dos, again, break them out into their individual components, and then add the new value that's been inputted. And then the last thing that's going to do is it's going to set the state of the form back to empty. So after you hit submit, it's going to take that, add it to the list of to-dos, and then reset the form back to empty. Rex Riker asks, how often do you do these kinds of streams? I stream every Sunday. So if you look at my channel, I have a schedule. I think my schedule should be on my homepage, I hope. But yeah, every Sunday at this time, we do something. It's not always React. It's usually something different every single time. Yep. So essentially, this is what's helping us keep track of the global state of where everything is at, right? We're keeping track of the global state of where everything is at, and the items in the list, and what's in the form. And then what we can see, what's happening here is that as soon as somebody hits submit, right, on click, as soon as somebody hits submit, we're adding to that list by calling the set to do state. So we're doing two things with state here, right? We're resetting this back to 0, and we are adding an item to set to do state. Yeah. So we're keeping track of where everything's at, how many items are in the list, what's being typed into the form, all that sort of thing. And then we can use stuff from that state and pass it down to the child components as props, right? So state gets set at the parent or as high as it can be, and then gets passed down to the children as props. But you only need to pass down to the children what the child needs to know, right? So you're keeping things on a need to know basis. Oh, sorry, that's behind my head. I apologize. You only pass down to the child what the child needs to know. So in this case, our to-do counter really only needs to know about what's on the list. And that's it, right? It's just counting what's on the list and whether it's done. So it only needs to know the list of to-dos and their completion status. So we pass that into the to-do counter as props. And then the to-do list needs to know a little bit more, right? And so what we're doing there is we are passing down, again, the list of to-dos that's already there, and then also the toggle to-do function. The toggle to-do function. So we're passing that down to the child so the child can call it. You'll notice that function isn't called here, right? We just define it. We just define that function. And so essentially what we do is it's kind of like at some auctions. So we had our analogy about auctions before. And at some auctions, they give the participants a paddle with their number on it. Like they give each participant a number, and they give them a paddle with their number on it. And so when they want to bid, they can raise their paddle and the auctioneer knows who bid. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. We're giving the child the ability to call this function and affect the state in the parent. So that's all. The child doesn't know what's going to happen to the state. The child just knows, hey, when something changes, I'm gonna call this function, and then the new state is going to get passed back down to me. Okay, so again, we're not giving the child any extra information. We're just giving them the ability to call a function when they need to. The children are on a need to know basis. Absolutely. That is exactly the case here. Yep. We're just giving the ability to speak when spoken to. React has a very Victorian parenting style, right? It's a little repressive. Exactly. Yep, I agree. It's very Victorian. All right. So that's what we're giving. So that's what we're giving this component, the ability to call this function, and then information about the to-dos that are currently in the list. Excuse me, I need to hydrate. Getting a little scratchy here. Okay. Thank you for the follows, folks. PVS97, Little Trucker Man, Robert J. Sanders, Jonathan Ripoff, and Foo Banana. Thank you. All right. And then finally, we're giving to do form a little bit more power. So it can add to dos. And again, remember that is what actually then, also calls set to dos, because it needs to be able to add things to to that state. And then passing in new to do information. So essentially what this is mostly for is for, let's see, what was that for? Sorry. New to do. Oh yeah, so that's just the new to do here. And then set new to do. So gives the ability to set the new to do function. That's mostly for just resetting the form. Okay. So what are these components going to do with these things that we're giving them? So let's go ahead and look at the counter. So what the counter is getting is it's getting the full list of to-dos. So that includes basically what's in the state. So I'm going to flip back here real quick. So just to remind us, that's just it's got the text of the to-do and then whether or not it's completed. So text and completion. If we go into the counter here, it's taking that, essentially that array of objects, and it's filtering it down and finding the ones that have a status of completed, where completed is true. There we go. That looks a little better. Okay, so it's looking at the list of to-dos, and it's saying, all right, find the ones where to-do.completed is true, and then get the length of that list. And that's the count, essentially the count of completed items. The reason why this works is this is, truthy, I guess. So true is true. And so it filters down to those and then gets the length. And then really to find the ones that are not completed, it just takes the total length and subtracts the completed items. Easy peasy. And then what it returns, yeah, cumbersome way, piece of shoe says cumbersome way, you can filter by not to do complete, and that would be it. Absolutely, you could. Yeah, so you could just do, you could do a bang, bang to do completed, and then that would do the same thing. Yep. But we're just given we're just using what ChatGPT gave us. We're not making any modifications. But yes, if you wanted to modify this, you could make it much better in that way. And then what it gives back to the parent is just the div with the completed to-dos and the remaining to-dos. Okay, does that make sense what this component is doing? Really, again, it's self-contained, and the thing that it returns is just the single div back up to the parent, and then app.js then just renders that in the appropriate order along with the other components. So again, this is called props. Yeah, this is good for noobs like me. Good. So this is called props, what's being passed in from the parent. Um, then in this case, there's no this component isn't calling any functions, right? Um, it's just returning a div with the appropriate information. It's not. It's just reading from the state. It's just reading from the state of the app. It's not making any changes to the state. There's no interactivity here, right? There's no interactivity here. It's just displaying something. So it never has to call any functions or update the state. It's just output. Okay. Logic.js says, so React really is just about managing state in the most efficient way possible to cause re-renders. It's really about keeping all of the components in sync. So that, yeah, and it's true. It can do a lot of things, right? It's meant for a lot of things. It's about knowing when an individual component needs to be re-rendered, um, and making sure that all of the components are staying in sync with one another, so that nothing ever gets out of sync. So it's just kind of herding cats. Oh, thanks, Jumpo. All right, so let's look at. So this is the simplest one, right? It's just output. There's no interactivity, nothing going on here. Let's look at one of the other ones and see what it's doing. Let's look at. Um, let's look at the list next. I think. Okay, so smaller again. Okay, so now this one, what this one is doing, it's taking in a couple things. It is taking in the list of to-dos, but it's also taking in this toggle to do function that it can then call. Um, so here we're mapping along the list of to-dos, and for each one in the list, we've done this before, right? If you've ever done something with EJS or a templating language, you've seen something like this before. It's taking looping through the list and generating a list item for each thing in the list, right? We've done that before. So here we have our list item. Um, the thing it's creating a key for each list item. So that's something that's I won't spend too much time on it, but in React, you need to have like unique key values for each item in a list. I think if you don't, you will get a warning. It's not good to not have those. So here we're just using the index value of the item that's being passed in. So 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, that gets set as the key. And then we're setting our class name here. And just for the bootstrap formatting, we're setting it as the true or false completion. And that determines whether or not it gets, that green highlight. And Lord Devilish says you shouldn't use index as key. Technically, no. You are correct. I'm saying, yeah, technically you should not. For this app, it's not going to matter. But yeah, I would suggest doing your own research, on key values and that kind of thing, because yes, it's not considered best practice to do this, but it works for us right now. So, but yes, that's a good point, Lord. Um, so for the class name, we're just taking the true false completion value, evaluating it, and then if it's true, we're setting the background green. If it's not, we're leaving the background blank. Thank you for the follow, by the way, Lord Devilish. Now, here is where some of the magic happens. We're also, for each list item, right? So inside the list tag, you can set things to happen on click, right? We've probably done this before in just HTML and that kind of thing, is you can set an on click value, and then when that item is clicked or that element is clicked, something can happen. And so in this case, what happens is the toggle index function, or sorry, the toggle to do function is being called. We pass in the index, and that then updates the state in the parent. So the child here, this child does not know what this function does. It doesn't care. It just knows that when I am clicked, I call this function, and then I get a new state passed to me from my parent. So it doesn't have to know or care what this does. It just knows to call it. And then, so we have our list item here, and then inside of the list item, we have our text. And then this is just setting that badge thing that's off to the right. It's just creating the badge, checking whether or not it's completed. If it's completed, then it gets the badge. That's all that's really happening there, else nothing. So the meat of it is kind of right here. We're setting the list item, setting the highlighting if it's completed, and then on click, this is where that state update happens. Okay, so this one again took in two props. It took in the list of to-dos and then the function that it's going to need to call. That's what was passed to it from its parent, and that's how it alerts the parent to changes in state. All right, does that make sense? That one's a little more complicated, and then the next thing we'll look at is the input form. Feel free to ask questions as you have them. Okay. Yeah, this is the right one. All right, so the last one here we have is our form, and this one took in three things. So it took in add to do, new to do, and set new to do. Okay, in this one, we can see that there's the add to do is called almost immediately. So forms, this input box is not just an input box, right? It's wrapped within a form. And so forms are very powerful. They're one of my favorite things. I've talked about this before. Forms are very powerful. They're one of my favorite things in HTML because they can just do so much by themselves, and then you can hook all sorts of things into them. And I don't know, forms are great. I love forms. Have you ever heard anybody get excited about an HTML tag? Well, here you go. Because yes, forms do that for me. So one thing that forms can do is have a certain thing happen on submit. And so since the submit button is part of the form, when the button is clicked on submit, we want to call add to do. Now, what add to do is doing is it is doing a couple things. It is taking the form and it is adding it. It's again calling a function, alerting the parent, and then the parent updates the state. It adds the new to do item to the list, and I believe it also resets this form. It's like the kid who got excited for corn, but for forms instead. It's forms. Yeah. It's got lots of tags. All right. And so inside of that, we just have a div for styling purposes. And then we have our input box. Now this is a text input. Got a class name of form control for styling. The value, this is the interesting part. Wow, I love forms. I'm glad somebody else does. I love them. They are the back. I swear to goodness, they are the backbone of the internet. Just start paying attention to how many forms you see all over the web. Just start noticing them. Start noticing forms, and you will see one on every single website pretty much. Yep. Do a right click and inspect and find the forms. The chat box here. Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. Probably. Forms. The silent hero. Yeah. Okay. So what's happening here? Well, the value item here is what it tells the form what to display in the input box for by default. So in this case, what it's going to be displaying by default is the value of new to do. And so this is going to mostly be set as empty. But what happens then is, so when the form first loads, this is going to be empty. The value of new to do is going to be empty. After a submission, new to do gets set back to empty string. But on change, this is the magic, on change. So on change, when somebody starts typing, doing stuff, right? On change, it takes whatever's being sent in and updates the state. Well, it calls the function which updates the state of the stuff in the box. So this is kind of the hardest part to wrap your head around, is that every time I'm updating, what I'm seeing here in the box, this is not just what I'm typing in the box? No. What you're seeing in the box is the state. You're seeing what happens on change. That state is being updated in real time as you type. It's calling this over and 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 over again. And then that state is being set in the parent and passed back down to the child. So as you're typing, this is real-time state updates happening. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking some of that built-in functionality that technically already exists in an input box, right? I can put an input box directly into an HTML page and I can type in it and I can see what I type. But what we're doing with React here is we are forcibly removing some of that built-in functionality and taking it out and moving it up to the parent, and the parent says, you know, child element component, you shouldn't know about any of this. This is not something you need to know. I'm just going to keep track of that for you, and then I'm going to tell you what to put in the box. Again, it's that Victorian parenting, right? The form is not allowed to know anything. The input box is not allowed to know anything. That state is held in the parent and then passed back down to the child as needed. So that's what's happening here, which is pretty freaky, right? This is not actually, keeping track of what I'm typing. It's just displaying what gets passed. It's just displaying what gets passed to it from its parent. Okay, and then the rest of it is pretty standard. We have our submit button, which triggers the on submit action when it's clicked. And so if you're building a form and you add a button, don't forget to add type of submit to that button. That is what makes the magic happen within the form tag to know that, oh, hey, this is actually a submit button. When somebody clicks it, I should attempt to submit this form in the way that I have been programmed to do so. So that might be to hit a route, right? To send a certain path up to a server. Or in this case, it's meant to call this add to do function. All right, and in the end, we just export it and it gets included in the list of components in app.js. Whew. Whoa, Nelly. So does that, I hope that's helpful for folks to kind of start to conceptualize how the parent is really the manager of our little household, right? The auctioneer manages the auction. The individual participants of the auction, they don't have to know, they don't have to keep track of the price. They can if they want to. I mean, there's nothing stopping them. But the auctioneer is the one holding all the information and making updates as needed and repeatedly announcing the price and the object being sold. The auctioneers announce it over and over and over and over and over again to the crowd. So you really cannot miss it. And so you don't have to pay attention. You can just raise your hand when you hear something that you like. You can call that function, and then the auctioneer remembers it, keeps track of it, and then tells everybody else. Yeah. So however you want to think about it, conductor of a choir, parent of a household, it's just remembering that we are lifting state up. We're lifting up that need to know basis up to the parents and only giving the children the bare minimum that they need in order to do their job. Okay. Jungle Blue Grandma says, I get excited when I see a text area. Yeah, text areas are great. I love that they have that little arrow that you can click in the bottom right corner and you can pull it down and you can make the text area bigger. Like, that's the best thing ever. It's great. Star Fox says, fun fact, Twitch runs on React. Oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. With the amount of things. So think about Twitch. Think about a Twitch window. Think about all the different things that need to stay in sync on that window, right? Chat needs to stay in sync with the stream. The viewer count in the bottom corner needs to go up or down based on the actual number of viewers that are tuning in. And all of those things need to work independently, but work together with each other to create the user experience. And so that's a fantastic use for React. Stay out of grown folks' business, kid. Parents saying this is big people stuff. Yeah. Keep your horns on. Thank you so much for the bits. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having fun. State lifts us up where we belong. Absolutely. All right. And we can actually, we should be able to, if we do an inspect here, we should be able to see, let's see, I always forget where that, oh, components. Yeah. So if I have React developer tools installed on my machine. And so if we look here, we should be able to see the state of each component as we update it. So I'm going to type something in here, and we should see this state update in real time as I type. We'll see. Yeah, look at that. All right. Whoa, Kailando. Thank you for the bits. Thank you for the follow and the bits. Jeepers. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ah. Okay. So watch this state update. You see how it's updating as I'm typing? So again, that's more proof. That is more proof that the form box, the input box, is not paying any attention to what I'm actually typing. We have removed that functionality. What is tracking what I'm typing is the state in the parent itself. So, and then these are, these are recorded as props that's being passed back down to the child. So that's just, I don't know, that was such a mind freak to me when when I first learned it. Like, wow, this form box doesn't even know what I'm typing. It's only listening to the parent. Yep, that's true. Okay, so I'm gonna just make an entry here. Cool beans. So that's in new to do. Now let's see. Oh, I wonder if, how do I see the? I want to see these ones here. Oh, sorry. I can look inside each of my components. There's a list up here. I can look inside them. So I'm looking at the to-do list here. Now we can see the props are tracked here. So as I click each item, we can see that completed is being toggled on and off. So that's that state, which is being kept track of by the parent. And then as I add a new item, sports, then that gets updated here in the state as well. Yeah. So if you're wondering what your state is doing at a given point, what its value is while you're interacting with it, you can use the React developer tools to kind of watch that happen in real time. There's a components tab in the inspector, somebody asked. So Zach, that only works if you install React developer tools, which is just an extension that you can install, I think, in pretty much every browser. Definitely do it if you want to work with React. It's a great way to make sure your state is working and updating as intended. And it's cool to watch too. I mean, really. And so if we look at our counter here, so we can see that again, what's being passed into our component here is the props of the to-do list essentially, and then the counter itself is doing a little bit of logic to sum those up. So completed 3, remaining 2. Completed, there are 3 values of completed, so it's just summing those up and then taking the remainder. Yep. So it's a great way to kind of look into your components. And here what we can do is we can look in the parent as well. So this is our inside of our parent, our app.js. So we can see the state, again, similar to what we looked at before. We can see our state. And as I type in here, yeah. So this is actually showing our parent state. So the things that the parent is tracking. It is tracking 2 things. So if I go back over to app.js, remember our app.js is tracking 2 things. It's tracking the list of to-dos, and it's tracking the essentially what we're typing as we're typing it. And that again gets passed immediately down to the children as props in real time. Yeah. Very cool. We'll be getting this extension. Yeah, absolutely do it. Again, it's free. Just install it and play around with state. I like the feature that shows the outline of components rendered during state changes. Are you talking about like the Oh, are you talking? Oh, you're talking about this part where you can hover over it and see what component it is? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So if you aren't sure what components, like how a page is broken up into individual components, you can go into the components tab and hover over individual parts of it. Oh, maybe where'd it go? Come on, it was letting me do it just a second ago. Now it doesn't let me hover anymore, but it was letting me hover over each individual component and see what was in, what part of the page that belonged to. Yeah. um okay, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. I can't think of anything else right now. Any questions on what we talked about? So, like state, or oh, I think we were going to add. We were going to see if we could add a delete ability, right? We were going to see if we could add an ability to delete an item from our list. So why don't we go ahead and see if we can do that? We didn't take a break at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and maybe take a 5-minute break. You can kind of think about all this state and props stuff. Um, and then when we come back, the last thing we'll do before we wrap up for the day is we will add a delete button, or try to, to each list item, and and then then I'll upload this to GitHub, and I'll put our prompts in the README, and so you can always access this later if you would like to. Chris Bag, thank you for the follow. Mattel Geek, thank you. All right, so let's take 5 minutes, and then when we come back, we will learn how to delete stuff. That's always fun, right? That's and if we want to be full crud, we got to be able to delete, right? So let's make this full crud. Burnout, thank you for the follow. Okay, reset this. Start the timer. I will see you back here in 5 minutes. Please get up if you are able to, or at least move around, right? Don't just sit there for 5 minutes. Get up, get a drink of water, pet your dog, pet your friend with their consent, and then come back in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left in the break, so get a drink of water if you haven't already. Stretch out a little bit if you haven't already, and I will see you back here in a minute. All right, I have stopped the timer, and let's see if we can add a feature to this app. All right. So hopefully this will be easy, but who knows what I'm getting myself into. So we're going to go back over to ChatGPT. I'm going to minimize my little sidebar there for a second. We're going to head back over to ChatGPT and have it give us some more stuff. I might have to reload the page. It's been a little while since we typed anything in here, and it might have timed out. So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively reload the page so it doesn't, give me an error message. So reload. Here we go. Okay, should be good. Thank you for the follow, Kurt Micro. Okay, let's think about what we want to ask here. Uh, I'm just going to be really general again. I like being general about these sorts of things to see how ChatGPT is able to handle it. Will it understand the context of what I'm asking? So add the ability to delete. I'm just going to say add the ability to delete an item. I'm not going to specify how I want that to be done. I'm also not going to specify that I want it to delete a to-do item. I'm going to assume that it's going to understand what I'm asking, but we'll see if that's the case. All right. Okay, so the very first thing here is we can see that um, it added something additional here. So it added delete to do. We'll see what that is in a minute. Rex says, it's so great. ChatGPT keeps track of the conversation all along. Yeah, that's the real power behind ChatGPT that makes it more robust than like your everyday chatbot, right? Generally, chatbots of old. Remember, what was that old chatbot that everybody used to have fun with that you could have a conversation with? I cannot remember it, but it would only, it would only evaluate each question individually as you went along, right? It would only take in your question and then think up the best answer to that question only. It didn't understand any context. And so that's the crazy thing about GPT. Smarter Child, maybe. That's not the one I'm remembering, but there used to be several of them. So all right. Okay. So now here, this is the meat of it here. So this is our delete to do function, and what this function is doing is again, it's taking the that list of to dos, it's breaking it out into its individual components. It's finding the one that was clicked on, and then it is updating the state to match. It's finding the one that was clicked on. It is taking out the one that was clicked on, splicing it out, um, and then it's resetting the state with this new value, and that state is then passed down to all of the individual components. So I got to make it continue here. Continue. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess it's not gonna give me the rest of the code. Um, come on, man. I kind of need the rest of it because I wanted to see what it was going to do as far as the thing that you click on. Like, what is the trigger that is going to um, trigger that delete? Oh, maybe it did give it to me. Hang on. To do list. Oh, okay, yeah, it did. All right, so I think we're okay. I think we can work with this. So I think what we'll need to do is make an update to um, the to-do list to also pass in this delete to-do um, function, but we'll double check that. So let's look at what it did for the to-do list. What did it add? So it's doing the map again, and then it's adding a button. Yeah, so it's adding a button, and when you click that, that's how you delete an item. So I'm going to take this to-do list component. I'm going to take the to-do list component, and I'm going to drop it in here into my to-do list component in VS Code. Doop, doop. Save that. Now let's just see if the button is there. I just want to make sure this looks. Oh boy. Okay, it's a little obnoxious, but it's okay. Zachney says it feels like that's a big missing piece in search engines when we're referring to context, right? Yeah, and that is what Microsoft is trying to correct by including ChatGPT with Bing. So I know that people like to dunk on Bing, rightfully so, but Microsoft is trying to close that context gap with search engines by incorporating ChatGPT with Bing. So yeah, they're trying to do exactly that. Logic J says delete. Yeah. So yeah. So if I click this, yeah, nothing happens, right? If I click this, nothing happens. I don't know if we're getting, see if we get any errors. Yeah, we are. So we're getting errors because I haven't finished. Yeah, it says delete to do is not a function. It doesn't know what to do. So that's fine. The button is there. So we've updated our component, but now we need to give the parent what it needs to pass information down into that component. Just ask Jesus. Are they going to call it Bing Bong? Yeah, Bing is such a silly name. I don't know. I know there are people that use it. I don't personally use it. I'm very embedded into Google at this point. But honestly, if ChatGPT incorporates successfully with Bing, then I might have to get over my urge to laugh every time I hear that name. Okay, so we've updated our component. Now we need to update the parent to make sure it's passing the correct props. This includes both values and functions down to the child. So in our to-do list container here, so in our app.js, we have our to-do list container where we define the functions that we can pass down to the children, right? And so in this case, I'm just going to grab all the functions and replace all of them. I don't think anything else has changed, but just in case. So boop. So now we have this additional delete to do function, which we can pass down into our list as a prop. And then again, the list, as soon as that delete button is clicked, that that component can call the function. The function gets executed, and then the state gets updated and passed back down to the child component. Okay. I'm gonna have it give me. I think I know what I need to do. I think all I need to do is pass down the into the to-do list. I need to pass one additional prop, so it'll be something like what do we call this? What was this called? Delete to do? Yeah. So it'll be just something like this. Delete to do and delete to do. So it'll be something like that. We'll see if that works, if I did it properly. All right, so boop. Hey, nice. That was easy, right? Even though we didn't have the rest of it, you can, it's very logical in the way that it works, right? You define functions, you pass them down to the children, child calls it, information gets passed back up to the state. So yeah, cool beans indeed. Yeah. Okay, and I can, still click things on off, that sort of thing. Um, so these things are all completed. I think we've built a to do app. We've celebrated. We've said cool beans, and I think so. Sports is not completed yet, right? And that's coming up. That's very soon. But yeah, so I think we've got all the functionality that we need. Yeah. Okay, so I think last step here is going to be pushing this stuff up to GitHub. And I will grab John Grandma says, "Hey, ChatGPT, insert a border radius of 5 pixels, and God help me if you make me create a style.css." Yeah, you could specify if you want ChatGPT to do inline styling on your HTML. Um, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could tell it to. All right, so I think the last thing here is we just want to push this up to GitHub. So I already know how to do this, but let's have ChatGPT tell us how to do it, like as if we didn't know. All right. So, how do I push this code to GitHub? Let's see what it tells us. I love that it starts with create. It creates a GitHub account. Oh, yep. And thank you for the reminder on the git ignore. Ship it. Thank you for the reminder on the git ignore. Yes. I need to add that. Otherwise, I'm going to be pushing a lot of crap I don't got to push. All right, and we're going to git ignore node modules. And there's some other stuff I could get rid of here inside of the React app itself. There's a lot of stuff here I don't need. I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going with whatever ChatGPT spits back. Okay, so it's telling us to do git init, makes sense, git add. So we do our local commit first, and then we do our add origin to our remote repository, and then we do our push. Yeah. Rex Record says, I love gitignore.io. It gives me a template of things to ignore. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, so you don't have to forget it. Sunday Bible class with our robot overlords. Nice. So Renit's, they asked, does the to-do list work if you refresh the page? Yeah, I don't think it's going to hold on to the state. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not holding on to the state. I don't think. I'm not sure that I solved that one. But yeah, technically it should hold state. In this case, it's not. It's refreshing it each time. That's okay though. I think my goal with this was more just to see if, number one, could ChatGPT do it? And then number two, talk about just some of the general concepts of state and props and that kind of thing. Captain Lovey says, is asking ChatGPT better than asking Google then? Better is kind of a subjective word. Um, Better is kind of a subjective word, right? Sometimes ChatGPT is dead wrong. It's had a massive amount of training data fed into it, but it's still very capable of coming to the wrong conclusion. And the thing is that what ChatGPT does is it states things as if they were 100% true, right? It doesn't give you a list of results to choose from, but it gives you a result and it treats it as 100% fact, even if it's dead wrong. So that's one very important thing to be aware of. Also, ChatGPT only has data through the end of 2021. So anything that's happened since then, and there's been a lot of stuff that's happened since then, it's not going to know about it. Yeah, and Say Sayed says it also doesn't know about the latest changes in popular packages. Exactly. And Say Sayed, we actually saw that a little earlier in the project. We were wanting to use Bootstrap for styling. And so we asked it to give us the CDN, the link to the CDN. And it did, and that was correct, but it linked to an older version of Bootstrap, which doesn't matter in our case. It's okay. But it linked to an older version of Bootstrap because it doesn't know about the newer versions. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the GitHub thing. I need to create a repo. So I'll do that. Oops. Chat GPT React app. So that repository. Okay. And I know it gives us the instructions right here, which what I would normally do, but I'm going to make sure that, we're going to follow ChatGPT's instructions here. So I'm going to kill my server. And then I'm going to say, all right, we'll just follow what it says. So I've created my new repository in GitHub. I've opened my terminal. I'm going to do my git init. Oh, actually, wait. Am I making sure I'm in the right? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm in the right folder here. I think it's actually git init has already probably been done, but we're going to follow the rules as written here. Yeah, so it reinitialized the existing repository because when you create a React app, it does that for you already. But that's okay. We're following the records as written and see what happens. All right, so we'll do a git add here. All right, done that. We'll do our git commit. Do -m. We'll just follow what it says. Initial commit. Okay. And then we'll do our connecting our remote repository. Git remote. Oops. Hang on. Git remote add origin. HTTPS. Then whatever that is. Oh, hang on. Hang on. Sometimes when I have my code window small, my copy and paste gets borked. So let me try this again. Remote add origin, fix that. And then copy the URL. There we go. Try that. Okay. Origin added. And then here's an example of something subtle, but it's technically not correct. So here it's telling us to do git push u origin master. However, the current standard is to use main instead of master. So this is out of date. Kind of like Sayed was talking about. Sometimes the stuff you get back is not going to be relevant to what is used today. And so this is wrong. If you look at the GitHub instructions, they tell you to do push u origin main. Yeah. And so, I mean, technically you can, but you're going to be out of sync with most repos if you do that. So we're going to do git push u origin main instead. And there we go. Yeah. Latjor says GPT-4, I am told, is going to be very current. Yes, yes. It's not finished yet. GPT 3.5, which is what we've been using today. This is ChatGPT 3.5. It is, yeah, this is an unfinished version of GPT-4. So once GPT-4 comes out, I'm sure it will be much more current. Yeah. Luffy says, thanks. Sounds like ChatGPT is a quick way to get an answer, but you need to understand enough to know whether the answer is correct. Right. Exactly. You need to provide the big picture perspective and the context that ChatGPT simply cannot provide, which is why it can be a very dangerous tool, especially if you're using it for anything scientific. For research papers, or I've heard it's particularly bad at physics for some reason. I think it just doesn't have enough training data. And so, yeah, I've heard from people who are in the science, who do the science for a living, that it is sometimes will state things as fact that are completely untrue, and in a very professional way, which is also dangerous. It makes it sound really good, even though it's completely wrong. I never really liked physics. Yeah, those papers are closed source. That's the thing with a lot of scientific papers is that yeah, they're not publicly available, and so they weren't part of the training data. Exactly. Okay, so that should be on GitHub. I will add my prompts to the repo, to the in as a README. Your results may vary, so I want to be clear about that. Even if you use the same prompts that we did today, your results may end up nothing like mine. Each time, so I usually do these things more than once before I present them, and I end up with something completely different every single time. Different problems, different features, that kind of thing. You cannot control, unless you're very specific, you can't really control the outcome. So your results may vary. You're welcome to try it out though. Have fun. So the link to that is here. There you go. Have fun with it. Um, And yeah, I hope this was a fun little basic introduction to both what ChatGPT can and can't do, and also to React in general, and what React is good for, and what it can and can't do. Hassler says, I haven't yet pushed code on my GitHub for a month now, so how can I catch up with those missing days? Um, you can backdate things. You can backdate pushes. I don't remember the string to do that off the top of my head, but yeah, you can set the date to a previous day. If somebody remembers it, feel free to drop it in chat. Um, yeah, you don't have to reset your computer date. You don't have to go that far. There is a when you push things to GitHub, you can manually set the date, but I don't have that in my brain at the moment. Um, Good. I'm glad you like that example. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, these ChatGPT streams are really fun. Hang says, "Nice, I made it quick to update on the current project." Oh, Hang, we just finished. Yeah, so what we did is we built a to-do list app in React, um, completely using nothing but code generated by ChatGPT. So this is a fully AI generated app. We just gave it prompts to generate the code that we needed. And then what we did is we took that code and we broke it out into we broke each component out individually and stored it in separate folders. Um, and we guided ChatGPT to come to that conclusion, to break those components out, to give us what we needed to encapsulate those components. And we also talked about, we added features, we added highlights, we added a delete button, and we also learned about state and prompts. So feel free to go back and rewind the stream and watch some of that too. Oh yeah. Okay. So Parasocial says git commit dash dash amend dash dash and then the date. I assume that's where you put the date. I honestly don't remember. It's been a long time since I've done that. But yeah, thank you, Parasocial. Hang Anderson says, very nice. Actually, first time using ChatGPT yesterday. Yeah, do use it. But as we've said many times on this stream today, it is not a replacement for knowledge. You need to go into it with prior knowledge about what you want to accomplish, and then use ChatGPT as a helping hand to get you to that end result that you already have in your head. That's the way to properly use it. So if you're interested in using ChatGPT to do more development work, you can always rewind today's stream and learn how to use React with it. Or you could go back to last Sunday's stream, where we built actually probably a more complex, truly full stack application using ChatGPT on its own. It has multiple pages. It had Mongoose. It had a MongoDB backend, a fully functioning server, multiple routes, and yeah, it was the full enchilada. So go back to last week's stream, or if you want to, build a React app with a backend, with an API on the back end, you could combine the you could combine the two streams together and do something like that. So sky's the limit, really. Scotty says, I'm looking forward to the Let's Build with Bing streams. Thank you for the follow, Artem and Danny Perez. And Latjor, thank you so much for the bits. I really appreciate it, Latjor. Say Sayed, thank you for the follow. Kurt Micro. Oh, and I think I missed a stretch earlier, so I'll do that. Latjor says, Mine Wolf, will you do a data analysis stream sometime? So, what are you looking for there, Latjor? Data analysis is a pretty wide field. I was a data analyst before I was a developer. So, I went straight from data analytics to being a dev because I discovered I like being a dev a lot more. However, I still think Microsoft Excel is the greatest tool ever created by humankind. So, fight me. But I do want to do an Excel stream at some point. Excel is a fantastic tool for every dev to know um, because it'll help you communicate better with the business. It'll help you do your own analysis on your own work. Um, and yeah. Oh, that reminds me, pivot tables, got to learn that stuff. Yeah, we can talk about pivots. I've been wanting to do an Excel stream for a while, so probably should. Yeah, so I will say data science is a little bit different than data analytics. Data science tends to use more higher math. You're starting to get into uh, advanced statistics and things. I didn't really do that kind of thing, um, so I can't really speak to it. So if you're interested in data science, I'm sure there's a lot of I'm sure there's got to be some data science streamers out there. You should check them out as well. Excel stream would be super helpful. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's that's one of the things I do want to do because yeah, Excel is one of those things that it seems people look at it and it seems daunting. They don't know how to get started, but you can start to develop a fluency with it, and you'll start to see when you're building functions and formulas and things in Excel that a lot of the concepts that you already know from JavaScript, some familiar keywords and things like that, they are things that you can and will use when building formulas in Excel. Things upper and lower case, true booleans, true false. Um, yeah, all sorts of things you can do. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to go ahead and find somebody that we can potentially raid. Oh, thank you, Hang. Hassler says if I have two folders in my project, like the front end and back end, should I install the node modules in both or only in the backend? So you'll want to install your I assume you're talking about like your npm and init. You're probably going to want to install that at like the root of your project directory. Mattel says, when's your next stream and about what? Do you know what it's about? Thinking too far in the future. Yeah. So sometimes I plan that far ahead. Sometimes I don't. In this case, I wanted to do two streams on ChatGPT. One of them building a traditional full stack app, and the other one building a React app. And we've done both of those now. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. No clue. Sometimes I plan ahead. Sometimes I don't. We have reached the extent of my planning ahead. All right. So Latjar says, wait, so last Sunday's stream VOD is still available? Yep. So VODs of my streams stay on my Twitch channel for 60 days. So they are up on my Twitch channel for 60 days, but before they expire, I 100% move them to YouTube. So you will never lose access to them. You can do exclamation point YouTube in chat right now if you want a link to my YouTube channel if you don't already have it. That's where you can find my older stuff that's older than 60 days and has since expired off of Twitch. So that's just another way for you to watch the content. Thank you for the follow, Captain Luffy, Surovi, and Nevermind. Randy Chrome says, so Latjar, yes, I have moved a ton of streams to YouTube. I think we're probably, I think only my stuff in the last month is not on YouTube. Randy Crum says, planning on streaming more a regular. So I do stream once a week right now, roughly. Um, I used to stream twice a week during the 100 devs cohort. That when we're not when we are when the 100 devs cohort is not in session, um, it's a little harder for me to come up with enough fresh content to be streaming twice a week. So I backed it down to once a week because it does take a lot of effort to come up with this stuff. It takes several hours of testing, planning, testing. I have to make something that's going to fit into 3 hours. I have to know enough about it to talk about it. So there's a fair amount of planning involved, and it was a little too strenuous to come up with my own stuff twice a week. So that's why I'm at once a week for now. However, once the 100 dev cohort starts again, I will probably go back to twice a week or maybe a different schedule. I don't know. And start talking about on 100 devs content again. So that's the plan, I think. When does the next cohort start? No clue. I do not know. That is up to Leon and the mods, the wonderful Discord mods who we love very much. Yeah, I am actually not a mod on Discord. I am more of a, I don't know, what's the best word for it? Compatriot, comrade of, of the 100 devs team. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap her up. Oh, you got someone to raid? Who would you like us to raid, Latjar? Preferably somebody in the software game dev, whatever tech space. Oh, Purple Elf. Yeah. Purple Elf is great. I have them on my raid list, actually. I'm already following them. They are always a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and raid Purple Elf. And I'm starting the raid now. All right, Parasocial, absolutely. Start your own stream, Parasocial, 100%. It's a lot of fun. It's not hard to do. Shouldn't be afraid of it. And it really does help cement concepts in your head. So raid is starting now. Here we go. I will see you all again next week. Enjoy the sports. Go sports. Go team. All righty. See you later.